If you can draw a box, you can draw the image that we show here. And with this, you're going to use a straight edge and a pencil. And this is just being done on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So you draw the horizon line, and you put down 2 vanishing points, as this is in 2-point perspective. And then I pick a corner and start with a corner. Then I go ahead and connect that line back to one of the vanishing points, so I form a triangle. And then I connect it to the other vanishing point. Again, using a straight edge. Now I'm going to limit my box by putting the ends on. And here is the box. So this is the basis for a house. And if you can do this, you can do the rest of the parts and pieces that you need to make the house. So now I'm going to locate the center for doing the gable style roof. And so I'm just kind of doing a corner to corner X. And then that'll kind of help me locate the center point for what would be the altitude of the gable. And so some of these lines I put in very lightly for construction lines because I hope to be able to erase them for the most part a little bit later. Most of your pencil line work will kind of disappear once you start putting ink onto the paper, which I will be inking this here toward the end. So now I'm just connecting in my different parts and pieces for the roof. I connected the 2 gable points to the corners, and then now I have to get my angle right on the lower portion of the roof down there. It's going off into the distance. It has to match that part closest to me. So this is the basic first box, and now we're going to think about making 2 boxes. So we've got the first portion of the house there, and now we're going to come out with a second portion. And again, I've got the back wall of a box already in, so now I'm going to draw the rest of the box coming out toward me. It's very important to make sure that the vanishing points, you're using the appropriate vanishing point for the appropriate side. So kind of pay attention to which vanishing point's being used for what lines. Many of the lines that I draw for this, they are overshooting where they need to be, so I can make sure that they're going to connect in correctly. So all this gets cleaned up at the end. So you have basically construction lines. Alright, so now I'm just getting the rest of the box in after I drew the floor in, and here is the other part of my house. And so now I've got the X here, and I'm going to go put one on this side so I can do a gable roof going back toward the right vanishing point. So just find the altitude again, go up about as high as I want to do the gable. And using my triangle or straight edge, we'll go through and connect it to the corners. These gable portions like this are the only ones that do not go back to the main vanishing points. However, the roof line at the very top does. So I just connect in and let it die into the roof here. And once I go through to start putting in the eaves, then some of this will have to change just a little bit. You can see right now the gable is exactly on top of the box, where if your actual house, it's going to overhang in what's called the eave by usually about 18 inches or so. So this is the parts where you just have two boxes put together and then two of the triangles on top, and that makes the foundation for your house. Now, from this point on, I can start thinking about adding in the different parts and pieces. So when you look at this, you start thinking about, okay, where the door's going to go, where the window's going to go. And so this is what I'm going to go through here now. Now this part's going to be sped up once I get to the inking portion, but right now I'm going in and just extending out my roof lines and just kind of making some of these minor changes that I'll need in place for the inking part. So try to go ahead and make that roof look like, you know, it's got the overhang to it. And make sure to kind of go all the way around. So I kind of have to think through some of this to kind of make sure it's going to line up correctly. So then we have this kind of L-shaped meeting there in the corner. And then I'm going through and just putting the edges on the roof there, so that, because you would have a boxing for the roof, since it's usually roofed in 2x4s. Now for this part, I'm going in and putting in like a porch area, and just kind of thinking through some of that. And again, I'm just having to go back and forth to the vanishing points and kind of getting everything to kind of line up there. So now I'm going to box in like a porch column here with like a very decorative or ornamental post on it. Kind of clean up a little bit and get some of these lines knocked down a little bit so you can see better. So this is going to be one of those triangular posts that you see sometimes. And that kind of goes up behind the eave portion. Alright, now start working in the door. And again, some of this I'm just working out basic location, things like that, and then I'll come back with the pen and ink and work in some of the other details once I have the ink going on. So now I get some big windows in. I keep most of these windows on here just pretty big, like, you know, plate glass windows. Of course, in modern construction, we wouldn't use plate glass anymore. It's going to be the sort of special glass that shatters so it doesn't leave the big chunks. Now for this window, I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to make a box and then go ahead and put an arch in on top using the boxing. So there'll be an arched window there. Alright, I'm just kind of put in a chimney on top just because. And so this is kind of the roughing of of where I want everything. Now, I'll start inking all these lines and I'll work with it freehand. And of course, you can tell it looks like I've had too much caffeine today. But I kind of want this to have kind of very loose, I want it to be a more loose sketch quality, but still in the 2-point perspective. So use all the pencil guidelines to go in and do the inking. And the biggest thing about some of this is just making sure that you have the paper turned where your drawing angles are the best for your hand. Everyone draws a little bit differently. So you have to make sure to find the angles that work best for you making certain lines. Some of your early animators would have rotating portions on their drafting tables, so when they drew by hand, they could rotate the drawing and draw to their strengths as far as the direction that they draw the best straight lines. So really I should be rotating my paper around, but I've got it taped down, so I'm kind of just sketching with it as it is. And then if this were a straight up technical drawing beyond just laying out the house, you would be using a straight edge for all of these lines so that there would be no squiggles. But I don't want the finished product to be more of a technical thing for this. And so this is a felt tip brush pen that's being used, and so it can get some varying thicknesses on it and stuff. And I can use it to get some of these deeper shadows put in. So you can see some of these details I'm just kind of freehanding in. And just sort of bulking up some of the lines there. Let's get some of the windows put in. All right, now for some of the glass and getting that done with a thinner point. So this is just a felt tip pen, but it's still permanent. And so with this glass, I'm just putting some places here and there just to give it some look like something's there. I'm going for different textures and things just to play around and see what looks good. Get some brick kind of roughed in and get some shingles on the house. And both of those techniques work very much the same way. And lots of stippling and dots underneath here. This part is sped up quite a bit when I started inking. I think it's at 300%, so 3 times the speed it was actually going. Just for reference, this video overall would have been about 30 minutes if I had left this part alone. So this can take some time, and if you're using a straight edge for everything, it will take even more time. Unless you just become really proficient at it. So you just have to get used to making the marks and using the tools. So I'm just going to start rubbing in some plants, and for this part I'm just going to go over some of the line work that's already been inked, because I'm kind of adding them in after the fact and didn't really plan on them. But I wanted to go ahead and get something to make the house look like it's sitting in some type of setting and get a little bit of landscape going on around it. Try to get just enough that it kind of looks like something. So lots of dots again going on the window, or going on the walls anyway. And then try to get some shadowing up at the top there, underneath the eave. Just work on some trees and try to darken up this little evergreen, kind of make it stand out a little bit, get some beds worked in here. Now, about having the other ink lines already there is that when you do this on top of it, it presents kind of a see-through situation, so you can still kind of see what's going on behind it, as long as you don't get too intense with the ink over the top. In some situations that'll be good, and others you'll have to kind of just use your artistic judgment there. So this is kind of wrapping everything up, and thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe, and I'm going to work on getting a few more things out. So here's your 2-point perspective house inked.